The massive space station hung like a jewel against the black of space. Its many arms stretched out in all directions, lights blinking along their lengths. This was where the galactic conclave met, the place where 57 alien species came together to talk, trade, and make rules for all. Today was special. Today, for the first time, humans would step onto the station. Admiral Tahoe Kim stood tall in his crisp blue uniform as the airlock doors slid open. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, leading the small group of humans into the grand meeting hall. Behind him walked Dr. Jisoo Park, her eyes wide as she took in the strange sights. Colonel Han Dae-sung followed next, his sharp eyes scanning everything, looking for threats out of habit. The rest of the team, 6 more humans chosen to show Earth's best qualities, entered the hall in a neat line. The meeting hall fell silent as they entered. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to stare at them. "They look so dense," whispered one blue-skinned alien to another. "I heard they come from a Class 12 world." "How is that even possible?" another replied. Admiral Tahoe had been warned about this. In the galaxy's rating system, most lived on worlds rated Class 3 or 4, places with gentle gravity, steady temperatures, and thin atmospheres. Earth, with its crushing gravity, wild weather, and thick air full of oxygen, a poison to many, was rated Class 12, a death world, a place where most aliens would die in minutes without special suits. "Welcome, Earth delegation," said a tall, thin alien with skin that seemed to glow slightly. "I am Ambassador Xylith of the Luminar. We are honored by your presence." Xylith was one of the few who seemed truly pleased to see them. Most of the other aliens kept their distance, some even backing away when the humans approached. "The honor is ours," Admiral Tahoe replied with a vow. "We come in peace and friendship, hoping to join your great alliance." A nervous murmur ran through the crowd. Join? These thick-muscled creatures wanted to join. "Yes, well," Xylith said, "there will be time for such discussions later. For now, let us proceed with the welcome ceremony." The humans were led to a raised platform where representatives from the conclave waited. Dr. Jisoo noticed how fragile they all looked. Thin limbs, delicate features, bodies that had evolved in gentle environments. By comparison, the humans must seem like giants, though none of them were particularly tall or muscular by Earth standards. Colonel Dae-sung leaned close to her. "Notice how they're watching us. Like we might break something just by walking too hard." Jisoo nodded. They've never seen Deathworlders before. To them, we're like something out of a horror story. The ceremony began with speeches and strange music. Admiral Tahoe stepped up to address the conclave when a loud explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered. A moment later, alarms began to wail. "We're under attack," shouted a small green alien with 4 arms. "It's the Vex Dominion." Chaos erupted in the hall. Aliens ran in all directions, some freezing in terror, others calling out in strange languages. The station shook again with another blast. "Attention all beings," a voice boomed over the speaker system. "This is Commander Ziv of the Vex Dominion. Your station defenses have been disabled. Your communication systems are blocked. Surrender the humans to us, and the rest of you may live." The aliens in the hall turned to stare at the human delegation, with new fear in their eyes. "What do they want with us?" Jisoo asked. Ambassador Xylith approached them quickly. "The Vex believe that Deathworlders like you will upset the balance of power in the galaxy. They have sworn to prevent Earth from joining the conclave. They want to kill us before we can join," Dae-sung said flatly. Another explosion, closer this time. The air pressure in the station dropped slightly. The aliens began to gasp and clutch at their throats. "Life support is failing," Xylith said, his glow dimming. "We don't have much time." Admiral Tahoe turned to his team. "This is what we trained for. Dr. Park, assess the medical situation. Colonel Han, organize defense. Captain Lee, find us a secure location. Let's move." The humans sprang into action while the aliens watched in shock. What surprised them most was how calm the humans seemed. Where there should be panic, there was only focus. Dr. Jisoo quickly moved among the fallen aliens, checking their conditions. "The pressure drop is affecting them severely," she called out. "Their bodies aren't made to handle it. We need to get life support back online." An alien with purple scales approached her, trembling. "How are you still functioning?" "The air, it's getting too thin." Jisoo smiled gently as she helped the fallen alien to a seat. "On Earth, we have mountains so high that the air is thinner than this. Some of us climb them for fun." The alien stared at her in disbelief. Meanwhile, Colonel Daesung was organizing the stronger aliens into groups. "We need to know the station layout. Where would the attackers most likely enter?" A bird-like alien pointed a shaking wing toward a diagram on the wall. "The main docking ports are here and here, but they could be anywhere by now." Daesung studied the map quickly. "Captain Lee, take Engineer Yunjae and find the main life support controls. See if you can restore them." Captain Sunwoo Lee nodded. "On it. Yunjae, with me." As they moved to leave, a loud crash came from the main doors. Everyone turned to see 3 armored figures enter the hall. They were Vex soldiers, tall and covered in black armor with glowing red lines. "There they are. The Deathworlders," one said, pointing a long weapon at the humans. Before anyone could react, Colonel Daesung grabbed a metal tray from a nearby table and flung it like a disc. It struck the lead Vex soldier's weapon, knocking it aside as it fired. The energy blast hit the wall instead of the humans. The Vex were stunned by the speed of the attack. They had not expected such quick reflexes. This moment of surprise was all Admiral Taiho needed. "Move," he shouted, and the humans scattered, taking cover behind pillars and overturned tables. What followed amazed the watching aliens. The humans, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with a coordination and ferocity that seemed impossible. They used anything they could find as weapons: chairs, tables, decorations from the walls. Engineer Yunjae, who had been about to leave with Captain Lee, grabbed a pitcher of water and threw it at the feet of one Vex soldier. The liquid spilled across the floor. Then he pulled a power cell from a nearby light fixture and tossed it into the puddle. The resulting electrical shock dropped the Vex soldier to his knees. How did you know to do that?" gasped an alien watching nearby. Yunjae shrugged as he helped Captain Lee drag the stunned Vex soldier away from the others. "Basic science. Water conducts electricity. All Earth children learn this." The other 2 Vex soldiers pressed forward, firing their weapons. The humans kept moving, never staying still long enough to be hit. This was another shock to the watching aliens, the speed and agility of these stocky creatures from a high-gravity world. Colonel Daesung slid across a table, knocked a weapon from one Vex soldier's hands, and then used the alien's own momentum to throw him into a wall. The impact left a dent in the metal. The last Vex soldier backed away, suddenly unsure. These humans were not behaving like any other species they had encountered. "Stand down," Admiral Taiho called out. "You don't need to die today." The Vex soldier raised his weapon again, but never got to fire it. A knife thrown by Dr. Jisoo embedded itself in the joint of his armor. The alien dropped, not dead but unable to continue fighting. Silence fell over the hall. The alien stared at the humans with new eyes. Not just fear now, but something like awe. You defeated them," Ambassador Xylith said, his glow brightening slightly. "But there will be more." Admiral Taiho nodded grimly. "Yes, this is just the beginning. We need to restore life support and communications. Then we can deal with the rest of the Vex." As the station continued to shake around them, the aliens watched the humans organize, plan, and prepare. These creatures from a deadly world were now their only hope of survival. And for the first time, many of them were glad the humans had come from their death world after all. The station lights flickered again. The air grew colder with each passing minute. Throughout the grand hall, aliens were starting to struggle for breath. Their bodies, evolved on gentle worlds, could not handle the failing life support systems. Dr. Jisoo Park moved quickly from one fallen alien to another. Her hands were steady despite the chaos around her. She checked pulses, helped position bodies to make breathing easier, and spoke calmly to those who were scared. A small green alien with 4 arms watched her work. "How are you still standing?" he asked. "The air. It's so thin now." Jisoo smiled as she checked the alien's vital signs. "This is nothing," she said. "On Earth, some people climb mountains where the air is half as thick as this. We call it a hobby." The alien's eyes widened. "You do this for fun." "Some of us," Jisoo replied. She noticed an alien twice her size lying on the floor, struggling to breathe. Without hesitation, she lifted the large creature in her arms. "What are you doing?" the alien gasped. "Taking you to a safer area," Jisoo said, carrying the heavy alien as if it weighed little. "This section is losing pressure too quickly." The watching aliens stared in shock. The human female was carrying a Duraxian adult, a creature that weighed at least 150 kilograms without showing signs of strain. On Earth, Jisoo explained as she walked, many humans train to lift several times their body weight, just for fun or for sport. "Your world must be terrible," wheezed the Duraxian in her arms. Jisoo laughed. "We think it's beautiful." Meanwhile, Colonel Daesung was organizing the defense. He had gathered a small group of aliens who were still able to move and function. "The Vex will try to take control of key systems," he explained, pointing to a map of the station. "We need to protect these areas." "But we have no weapons," said a tall, thin alien with blue skin. Daesung looked around the room. He grabbed a metal pole that had broken off from a decorative wall panel and bent it easily into a more useful shape. "Now you have a weapon," he said, handing it to the alien. He picked up a serving tray, a knife from the welcome banquet, and several other objects. Within minutes, he had created makeshift weapons for everyone in the group. One of the aliens, a scholar from a world of peaceful philosophers, looked at the sharp metal rod in his hands. I don't know how to fight," he admitted. "You don't need to," Daesung replied. "You just need to look like you can. Most fights are won before they begin." Just then, the doors at the far end of the hall burst open. 3 more Vex soldiers entered, weapons raised. "Stand back," Daesung told the aliens with him. "Watch and learn." What happened next would be told and retold across the galaxy for years to come. The human moved with a speed that seemed impossible for his solid frame. He ducked under the first energy blast, rolled forward, and came up inside the guard of the first Vex soldier. Using only the banquet knife and a serving tray as a shield, Daesung fought all 3 soldiers. His movements were precise, efficient, and deadly. He didn't waste energy. Every strike had purpose. In less than a minute, all 3 Vex soldiers lay on the floor, disabled or unconscious. The watching aliens stared in silence. "How?" one of them finally asked. "How did you do that?" Daesung wiped a small cut on his arm. "Thousands of years of warfare," he said simply. "Humans have been fighting each other and predators since we first stood upright." "You must be your planet's greatest warrior," said another alien. Daesung actually laughed at this. "No, on Earth, I'm just average. There are millions better than me." The aliens looked at each other in new fear and respect. What kind of species produced millions of warriors of this caliber? In another part of the station, Captain Sun Woo Lee and Engineer Yun Jae Kang were fighting their own battle against time. They had reached the main life support control room, but the door was sealed. "The radiation levels beyond this point are dangerous," warned an alien technician who had guided them there. "The Vex must have damaged the shields around the power core. No one can go in there now." Sun Woo checked the readings on the door panel. "How much radiation?" The alien showed her the numbers. "Enough to kill most species in 10 minutes. Even with protection, it's too dangerous." Sun Wu and Yun Jie exchanged looks. That's about the same as a sunny day in Seoul, Yun Jie said with a shrug. Maybe a bit worse, Sun Wu replied, but nothing we can't handle for a short time. The alien technician stared at them. You can survive this. Our home star produces radiation like this all the time, Yun Jie explained. Our bodies are built to handle it. Not forever, but long enough. The bigger problem was the door itself. It was designed to seal completely in case of emergencies, and the locking mechanism was now damaged. We need to get through this door, Sun Wu said, examining the thick metal barrier. The alien technician shook his head. Impossible. It's made of duralloy. Nothing can break it without heavy equipment. Sun Wu placed her hands on either side of the door seam. She took a deep breath, set her feet firmly, and began to pull. Her face turned red with effort. The muscles in her arms and shoulders bulged. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groan of protesting metal, the door began to move. Slowly at first, then faster. Sun Wu pulled the heavy door open just enough for a person to slip through. The alien technician's mouth hung open in shock. That's not possible, he whispered. The door weighs over 300 kilograms, and the locking mechanism. Earth gravity is strong, Sun Wu said, breathing hard from the effort. We grow up pushing against it every day. Yun Jie slipped through the gap in the door. I'll get the systems back online. Won't take long. True to his word, within 10 minutes the lights stopped flickering. The air circulation system hummed back to life, and fresh, breathable air began to flow through the station once more. When Yun Jie emerged from the room, he was sweating but smiling. Fixed it, he said simply. The alien technician, who had been sure the humans would die from radiation exposure, stared at them with new understanding in his eyes. Your species, he said slowly, you really are from a death world, aren't you? We just call it home, Sun Wu replied. Back in the main hall, Ambassador Xylith was watching Dr. Jisoo tend to the injured. His natural glow had brightened now that the life support systems were back online. Doctor, he said, I must ask you something. Jisoo looked up from bandaging a wound. Yes. Your people, you fight so well. You're so strong. Are you a species of warriors? Jisoo thought for a moment. No, she said finally. We're survivors. There's a difference. I'm not sure I understand, Xylith admitted. Warriors seek battle, Jisoo explained. Survivors just refuse to die. Earth taught us to survive against everything it could throw at us. Predators, weather, disease, disaster. We learned to adapt, to endure, to overcome. She finished bandaging the alien's arm and stood up. What you're seeing isn't aggression, it's persistence. Humans don't give up easily. Xylith's glow pulsed thoughtfully. I think I begin to understand why the Vex fear your kind joining the conclave. Before Jisoo could respond, Admiral Taiho's voice came over the communication system, which was now working again. Attention all station personnel and guests. The Vex have taken control of the lower levels. They're moving toward the central hub. All those who can fight, join Colonel Han at the main corridor. All others, move to the upper levels for safety. Jisoo looked at Xylith. The real test is just beginning, she said. Around them, aliens who had minutes ago been lying helpless on the floor were now standing, looking at the humans with new eyes. Fear was still there, but now mixed with something else. Hope. The Deathworlders had proven they could survive when others couldn't. Now they would see if these humans could fight back against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. And deep inside, many of the aliens were starting to wonder, what if the humans won? Admiral Taiho Kim stood at the command center, looking at the station maps spread before him. Around him, the remaining station security team. A mix of 4 different alien species watched nervously as he planned. The Vex have control of levels 3 through 5, he said, pointing to the glowing red sections on the map. They're moving upward, trying to reach the central hub. "There are at least 30 Vex soldiers," said a tall, thin security officer with pale blue skin. "And only 8 of us humans. We cannot fight them directly." Admiral Tahoe smiled slightly. Who said anything about fighting directly? He tapped the communication device on his wrist. "Colonel Han, are you in position?" "Yes, Admiral," came Dae Sung's voice. "Team 1 is ready. Captain Lee." "Team 2 in position, sir," replied Sunwoo. Tahoe looked at the aliens around him. "On Earth, we have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog." The aliens looked confused by this. "It means," Tahoe explained, "that spirit and strategy can overcome superior numbers. Now watch how humans hunt." He pressed a button, and the station lights went out completely in levels 3 through 5. In the darkness of level 3, a group of Vex soldiers moved cautiously through a corridor. Their armor provided some light, thin red lines that outlined their shapes in the darkness. This made them easy to see. "Keep moving," ordered their leader. "The control hub is 2 levels up." "Commander," said one soldier, "I don't understand why these humans are such a threat. They're just animals from a harsh world." "That's exactly why they're dangerous," the commander replied. "They evolved in conditions that would kill any normal species. The Conclave must not add their savagery to." He never finished his sentence. Something moved in the darkness above them, something fast and silent. The commander disappeared upward with barely a sound. "What was that?" A soldier cried out, raising his weapon toward the ceiling. "Commander." Security officer Min Ho Choi moved through the ventilation system with practiced ease. His years of training in Earth's special forces had taught him how to move without making noise. The heavy Vex commander now lay unconscious behind him, bound with wire stripped from the station's damaged systems. Min Ho smiled to himself. The Vex had no idea what they were dealing with. They thought humans were just strong animals. They didn't understand that humans were predators too. Predators who had hunted on the plains of Africa for thousands of years before building cities. Below, the Vex soldiers were panicking, firing their weapons at shadows. Min Ho tapped his communication device twice, a signal to the others. On level 4, communication specialist Yun Je Huang sat at a control panel she had hacked into. When she received Min Ho's signal, she smiled and pressed a series of buttons. Throughout levels 3 through 5, the station's speakers came to life. Strange sounds began to play. Low growls, heavy breathing, the sound of claws on metal. Yunjai had created these sounds by mixing together recordings of earth animals, tigers, wolves, and bears, with the mechanical sounds of the station itself. She also controlled the emergency lights, making them flicker in ways that created moving shadows on the walls. Psychological warfare, she had explained to the amazed alien technicians watching her work. Humans learned long ago that fear is a weapon too. The Vex soldiers on level 3 were professionals, trained for combat, but they had never experienced anything like this. The sounds seemed to come from everywhere at once. Shadows moved at the edge of their vision, and one by one, their comrades were disappearing. "This is impossible," one soldier said, his voice shaking. "There are only 8 humans on this station." "Stay together," ordered the new commander. "Back to back. Nothing can approach without." A ventilation grate crashed down in the middle of their group. The soldiers spun, weapons ready, but there was nothing there. Above, someone shouted. They looked up just in time to see Colonel Dae Sung drop from the ceiling. He landed in the middle of their formation and moved like lightning. Before they could react, he had disabled 2 soldiers with precise strikes to weak points in their armor. The others fired, but Dae Sung was already gone, rolling into a dark corner. From another direction, Captain Sunwoo appeared. She threw a small device that stuck to one soldier's armor and released a cloud of dense smoke. The soldier's vision was obscured, and in the confusion, more of them fell to quick, silent attacks. On level 5, the Vex general paced nervously. Half of his force was no longer responding to communications. "This is not possible," he muttered. "They're just Deathworlders. Strong, yes, but not this. Not this." "Skilled," suggested a voice from the darkness. The general spun around. Admiral Taiho stepped out of the shadows, unarmed. "How did you get in here?" the general demanded, raising his weapon. "Your soldiers let me pass," Taiho said calmly. "Well, not consciously. They're all taking a nap." The general fired his weapon, but Taiho was no longer where he had been standing. With speed that seemed impossible for his solid frame, the admiral had moved to the side. "You don't understand us," Taiho said, circling slowly. "You think because we come from a harsh world, we must be simple brutes. But our planet didn't just make us strong. It made us clever." The general fired again and missed. He backed up against the wall, suddenly afraid. "What are you?" he whispered. "We're human," Taiho replied. "We evolved from prey animals into predators, then into builders and thinkers. Our ancestors survived ice ages, megafauna, plagues, and each other. Earth doesn't let anything survive unless it's adaptable." The general raised his weapon one more time, but never got to fire. A blow from behind knocked him unconscious. Engineer Yun-jae stood there, holding a piece of station equipment he had turned into a weapon. "Nice speech," Yun-jae said with a small smile. "Very dramatic." Taiho shrugged. "I wanted him to understand why they lost." Throughout the station, the pattern was the same. The Vex soldiers, used to quick victories against weaker species, found themselves hunted by humans who used the station itself as a weapon. Ventilation shafts became pathways for surprise attacks. Maintenance tunnels allowed the humans to appear and disappear like ghosts. Normal items became traps and weapons in human hands. Ambassador Xylith had insisted on following Minho on his mission, staying far enough back to be safe, but close enough to observe. What he saw changed his understanding of humans forever. "You move so quietly," Xylith whispered as they crawled through a narrow passage. "I thought your dense muscles would make you clumsy." Minho smiled slightly. "On Earth, our ancestors had to hunt animals with better hearing and smell than us. We learned to move silently, or we didn't eat. And the way you all work together, without even speaking to each other. Humans are social predators," Minho explained. "Like wolves. We hunt better in packs." What impressed Xylith most was not just human strength or speed, but human endurance. The humans had been fighting for hours without rest, moving constantly, thinking clearly despite stress and injury. "Aren't you tired?" Xylith asked as they paused at a junction. Minho's face showed cuts and bruises. He had been injured in an earlier fight, but it didn't seem to slow him down. "Of course," he replied. "But humans can keep going when we're tired. On Earth, persistence hunting is one of our oldest techniques. We just keep following prey until it collapses from exhaustion. We can run for days if needed." Xylith's glow dimmed slightly as he processed this. "You mean you just don't stop, even when injured or exhausted?" "We stop when the job is done," Minho said simply. Then he held up a hand for silence and pointed ahead. 3 more Vex soldiers were visible at the end of the corridor, guarding a door. Minho touched his communication device, sending a signal to Yunji. A moment later, all the lights in the corridor went out. Strange animal growls echoed from the speakers. The temperature dropped suddenly as Yunji vented cold air into the section. When the emergency lights came back on 30 seconds later, the 3 guards were unconscious on the floor, and Minho was nowhere to be seen. Xylith stayed hidden, as he had been instructed. But he recorded everything with a small device. The galaxy needed to see this. They needed to understand what humans really were. Not just strong creatures from a harsh world. Not just clever tool users or cooperative hunters. They were something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that had turned the very hardships of their evolution into strengths. And as the last of the Vex soldiers fell to human hands, Silith realized with a mixture of fear and hope what this would mean for the future of the Conclave and the galaxy itself. 3 days after the attack, the Conclave station hummed with activity once more. Emergency repairs were nearly complete. The Vex soldiers had been taken into custody by the Conclave's peacekeeping force. Life was returning to normal, but nothing would ever be truly the same again. In the grand meeting hall, hundreds of representatives from across the galaxy gathered. The room buzzed with excited conversation. Everyone was talking about the same thing: the humans. Admiral Tahoe Kim stood tall on the speaking platform, waiting for the room to quiet. Behind him stood the rest of the human delegation, their uniforms clean and pressed despite everything they had been through. The station's chief administrator, a tall four-armed alien named Prin, raised all 4 of his hands for silence. Gradually, the room grew quiet. 3 days ago, Prin began, this station faced its darkest hour. The Vex Dominion, in an act of unprovoked aggression, attacked us with the intent to prevent Earth from joining our alliance. They believed that humans, as creatures from a Class 12 Deathworld, would upset the balance of power in our peaceful galaxy. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Many nodded in agreement. They had feared the same thing. And yet, Prin continued, when disaster struck, it was these same humans who saved us all. While many of us, myself included, were helpless in the face of failing life support and armed attackers, the human delegation demonstrated what it truly means to come from a Deathworld. Prin gestured to Admiral Tahoe. I now invite Admiral Kim to address the conclave. Tahoe stepped forward. The room fell completely silent. Thank you, Chief Administrator, he began in a calm, clear voice. First, I wish to honor those who were injured in the attack. We are grateful that there was no loss of life. He paused, looking around the room, meeting the eyes of many aliens who had witnessed human actions during the crisis. I understand many of you fear us, he continued. You look at our dense muscles, our endurance, our ability to withstand conditions that would kill you, and you see a threat. After watching us fight, perhaps that fear has grown stronger. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. But I ask you to look deeper, Tahoe said. Yes, Earth shaped us to be strong. But it also shaped us to be adaptable, cooperative, and creative. The same planet that gave us the strength to break metal doors also taught us to care for each other, to build civilizations, to create art and music and science. He gestured to Dr. Jisoo, who stepped forward with a small device in her hands. Dr. Park will now present her findings, Tahoe said, stepping aside. Jisoo activated the device, and a holographic image appeared above the platform. It showed human medical data, heart rates, brain patterns, and hormone levels recorded during the attack. During the crisis, Jisoo explained, I monitored our biological responses. What you see here is interesting. When the attack began, our stress hormones increased, just like yours would. But then something happened. She pointed to a specific point on the chart. Here, when we began helping others, our bodies released different chemicals: oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. These are the same chemicals released when humans care for children, when we share food, when we create art, or when we solve complex problems together. Jisoo looked up at the assembled aliens. What I'm saying is this. The same biology that makes us dangerous in combat also makes us empathetic healers and creative problem solvers. On Earth, those who survived weren't just the strongest. They were those who worked together and cared for each other. A small blue alien near the front raised a slender hand. But you fought so well. You hunted the Vex like they were prey animals. Colonel Dae-sung stepped forward. Yes, he admitted. Humans can be fierce warriors. Our planet taught us that skill. But on Earth, the greatest warriors were those who fought to protect others, not for personal glory. Every skill we used against the Vex, we can teach to you, to protect the Conclave, not to threaten it. At the back of the room, Ambassador Xylith floated forward. His body glowed brighter than usual with excitement. "If I may address the conclave," he said. The chief administrator nodded, and Syleth continued. "During the attack, I recorded the humans in action. With their permission, I would like to share not just their fighting skills, but something more important." A new hologram appeared. It showed Captain Sunwoo carrying injured aliens to safety, Dr. Ji-Soo treating wounds with gentle hands, Engineer Yun-jae working tirelessly to restore power to critical medical systems. "Yes, they fought," Syleth said. "But first, they protected. They healed. They fixed. The fighting came only when necessary." The images changed to show Minho disabling Vex soldiers without killing them, Dae-sung creating defensive barriers to protect civilians, and Tae-ho organizing both humans and aliens into efficient teams. "I have lived for 300 years, Syleth continued. "I have met many species. Never have I seen one with such a balance of strength and compassion, of fierce protection and gentle care." The room was silent now, every alien listening carefully. "The Vex feared humans because they come from a death world," Syleth said. "But I now understand. It is precisely because they come from a death world that we need them. They have learned lessons in survival that our gentler worlds never taught us." A tall, thin alien with skin like tree bark stood up. "But what if they turn against us? What if they use their strength to conquer rather than protect?" Tae-ho stepped forward again. "A fair question," he said. "Let me answer with a story from Earth." The room grew quiet once more. "On our world," Tae-ho began, "there was once a powerful empire called Rome. One of their philosophers wrote, 'The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must.' For a time, many humans believed this was the natural law." He shook his head slowly. "But we learned better. Through thousands of years and many hard lessons, we discovered that true strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation. The greatest human achievements, our art, our science, our medicine, came not from conflict, but from working together." Tae-ho gestured to his team. "Each human here could have survived the attack alone. We are built for survival, but we chose to protect everyone, not just ourselves. That is the true lesson of Earth, not that the strong survive, but that those who help others thrive." The chief administrator stepped forward. "A vote has been prepared," he announced. "The question before the conclave is simple. Shall Earth be welcomed as a full member of our alliance?" The voting took only minutes. When the results appeared on the main screen, even the humans looked surprised. Every single representative had voted yes. As the meeting concluded, a young luminar approached Colonel Dae-sung. Unlike the older members of his species, his glow was still developing. Soft blue, rather than the bright white of Ambassador Syleth. "I must ask," the young luminar said hesitantly, "how do you remain so calm in disasters that terrify the rest of us? Is it because nothing frightens you?" Dae-sung smiled gently. "Many things frighten me," he admitted. "But on Earth, we face our fears daily. The cold, the dark, the dangerous. These are normal parts of our world." He placed a hand on the young alien's shoulder. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being afraid and acting anyway. That's something anyone can learn, no matter what world they come from." The young luminar's glow brightened slightly. "Will you teach us?" "That," said Dae-sung, "is why we're here." As news of the incident spread across the galaxy, other species began to look at humans differently, not just with fear of their Deathworlder might, but with respect for what that might represented. The ability to transform adversity into strength, to use the harsh lessons of their evolution not just to survive, but to protect others. Earth had joined the stars not as conquerors or savages, but as guardians, and the galaxy would never be the same again.